lesson learned from early days of really working with both of you guys in some of the consulting engagements and things like that is you can't come into the room with a bunch of people who really, really know what they're doing and think you're the smartest guy in the room. You're not. You need to come in from the position of ears open first and be in a place where you can build trust over time by showing people that you can help them.
Welcome to Morrissey Goodale's Word on the Street podcast, where it's all things AE.
I'm Mark Goodale, he's Mick Morrissey, and you are watching Morrissey Goodale's Word on the Street podcast. Mick, it's April, baseball season. How do you feel about that?
It's America's pastime, Mark. And you know I'm a big fan of earned run
average.
Earned run averages. Is that something?
That's a pitcher's statistic.
Outfield, that's a term that
There
I
are some
use.
sabermetrics that you're probably interested in as well, war and things like that.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
We'll get into that in another podcast, perhaps.
I'm supporting the Old Town team.
Yes, the squadron, the local squadron. So we have a great guest today, Mick. Let's not waste any time. Well, yeah.
Okay.
It says it here.
Okay.
So
Well, I think we know him, so I think he is a great guest.
He is a great guest. And joining us today is Neil Churman, President and CEO of Woolpert, number 47 on ENR's top 500 list. Neil leads Woolpert's business sectors, driving operations, organic growth, and M&A. And before that, he served as the firm's chief corporate development officer, leading their acquisition strategy. His background spans strategic growth, investment banking, and consulting across the AE and geospatial industries, including several years spent in purgatory with Morrissey Goodale. In fact, he holds an MBA from Carnegie Mellon and a civil and environmental engineering degree from the University of Pittsburgh. Neil, welcome to the street. Great to have you.
Gentlemen, happy to be here. Purgatory. I don't know if that's how I would describe it, maybe more positive than that, but vital experience, gentlemen, and good to be here today. So thank you.
Yeah, we had some good old days, didn't we, Mick?
Yeah, Neil, how long were you with us? Do you remember? It seemed a lot, whatever number you say is going to seem a lot longer for me.
About 4 years. And I guess, Mick, if, in your mind, maybe multiply that by 5 or 10, whatever you think, but
4 years. Yeah. That was great. It was great working with you. It really was. You were a super part of the team, and we were a better firm with you. And the correlation between Morrissey Goodale employees and industry CEOs, you bring that ratio right up for us. Neil, your resume here, before Mark gets into the really serious questions, your resume here, you've done everything in the industry, right? You worked you're a civil engineer with an MBA. Got on the corporate development track when you were back with Michael Baker, right? Would that be right? And then moved from Baker to us, and then investment banking, and then corporate development roles, and eventually president CEO. What was your favorite job, Neil? I'm writing down your answer.
Well, you mean aside from my current one?
Aside from your current job, of course.
Well, the obvious answer is quality time spent with one Mick Morrissey and one Mark Goodale. In Natick, Massachusetts, or I should say, really, to be precise, Sherborne, Massachusetts.
Yes,
but now Natick, right?
It is now Natick. We're moving on up.
Yes,
as the saying
we
goes.
are. Neil, it's great to see you. We're looking forward to having a great chat here.
Likewise. So
Neil, we were talking off air there just a little bit, and you've been president and CEO since January. This is not a small, insignificant firm here. This is a big firm, 2,700 people, $650 million in revenue. That can be a daunting task. And you're a relatively young guy, a lot of experience, but still a lot of tread on the tires, a lot of road to go for you. What's been the biggest surprise for you so far? And do you ever feel like, I'm at the helm of this big ship? What the heck's going on here?
I've had the benefit of a lot of really good experience over a long period of time, and not just with, sincerely with the both of you, right, and working as part of the firm, and through that getting exposure to other CEOs running their firms, right, through our work in consulting and advising on deals. And I got to do that when I was at 7 Mile Advisors, similarly working with executives and being in the room with CEOs. I had the benefit of working for 2 years at TRC with Chris Vinci, who's a phenomenal CEO in our space and learning under his tutelage. and now Scott Catron, right, who's our executive chairman, my predecessor in this role. And Scott did a phenomenal job in terms of helping me get prepared. So there are always days when the unexpected happens and you think to yourself, now what? But at the end of the day, I think it is just having that exposure and experience over a long period of time in our industry, having a good handle on the key levers that help us operate our business in the way that we need to and help us build the right kind of environment for our employees. Most importantly, it kind of always just ends up coming back to fundamentals. There isn't some better mousetrap most of the time to solve whatever the challenge of the day is. It comes back to doing the right things and doing them routinely. And if we just continue to remind ourselves of that, it generally winds up being okay. So, there are days when I wake up and I say, wow, this is a lot, right? And a lot going on, but that is in part due to the role. And that is in part due to two very young children at home that also add to the amount of energy that I got to put out there into the universe every day. But all in all, it has been a very, very smooth transition. And I have to credit Scott in a big way for his role in that and the way in which we have worked together to make sure the firm is in good hands here.
Well, Neil, as you well know, being in the position you are in, leadership, you succeed when you accomplish things through others. And so you're coming into this role, you've got to be able to build trust and alignment with sector leaders and possibly folks who have been in the business and in that company a lot longer than you have been or had been at that time. What was that like trying to build that and get that respect?
You kind of hit on it with trust, Mark, in my mind. And it starts with trust, and trust is really the foundational element. In fact, we have one of our internal executive team meetings next week, and we had a pre-read article we put out for everybody that is entitled Lead with Trust. And there's three fundamental pieces of that puzzle, in this article. And it talks about authenticity, it talks about empathy, and it talks about logic, right, is the three key components. And from my perspective, I think the authenticity piece comes fairly naturally. I kind of am who I am, right? And that part has been straightforward. I think the empathy piece comes fairly naturally, and the logic piece, right? Do you know what you're doing, right? Do you have fundamental subject matter expertise on the things you need to have subject matter expertise on? Competence. It's table stakes, right, in this kind of a role. So you have to bring all three of those together to build those relationships and trust with people, and you have to do it over time. And I think, a lesson learned from early days of really working with both of you guys in some of the consulting engagements and things like that is you can't come into the room with a bunch of people who really, really know what they're doing and think you're the smartest guy in the room. You're not. You need to come in from the position of ears open first and be in a place where you can build trust over time by showing people that you can help them and you're going to listen to them and do the right things for them and for the company. So it takes time, right? But I think have been here with the company now 3+ years and actually had an opportunity to work with the company as an advisor to the company in prior role. Getting to know everybody over that period of time and getting to build that trust up has been absolutely key to being able to be successful and help keep driving us forward and getting the right people driving towards the same goal, which is tough.
Yeah, Neil, I look at you as part of the new breed of CEOs in this industry. So your financial partner is who?
BDT and MSD. So the MSD is Michael Dell's private investment vehicle, and then they merged the fund with BDT about 2 years ago.
And so when we look at the ENR top 100, 24, 25 firms have a similar type of capital model as yourselves. When you look at the average tenure of CEOs in the entire ENR top 500, tenure with their firm is about 27 years. In the position of president or CEO, it's about 13 years, right? So your tenure is much less and in the position is much less. But what I think is interesting here is around this discussion about trust, authenticity, empathy, and logic. I couldn't disagree with you. I think at all. I think that's right on the money. I think a decade, maybe 2 decades ago in this industry, what trumped or was at least equal to those three in this industry was tenure. And that's where you get the 27 years and the 13 years from. And I think competency now, and if I can overlap that with the logic, is for firms like yours that have a financial partner, they're looking for that competency and that logic, and less the tenure maybe or the experience with the firm. And so I think that you're part of this change in the industry, and you're emblematic of that. Also, this data that I'm citing, Neil, is from, let me just look here, O'Morrissey Goodell, so it must be right. Care to hazard a guess at the average age of the CEO in the ENR Top 500?
I did read the article when it was authored by, I believe, one Mick Morrissey.
It could have been.
I don't recall the exact number off the top of my head, but I do think it started with a 6, if I remember correctly.
It's 59 now, and I believe you've got 19 years to go. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And just the point I wanted to make, which I missed there, Mark, which is if you look at that tenure with firms of ENR Top 500 CEOs, it's 27 years on average. For firms like yours that have a private equity or family office or other capital model, the average tenure with the firm is 8 years. And oftentimes are brought in from not only outside the firm, but outside the industry. And it speaks to our industry is changing, I think.
Yeah, I think, from where I sit, Mick, one, I feel very fortunate and happy to be able to be in the position where we can help drive the firm forward. And what's interesting about Woolpert, the company is 111 years old.
Yeah.
We have been around for a long time. Now, private capital has only been part of the equation since 2018, and we're in our second capital partner. And I use that way to describe it very specifically because that's really what they are. It is emphasis on the word partner. What's a little unique about our model is we've got about 25% of our employees are shareholders in the company. So we go pretty broad and deep with our employee ownership model, but we've got the gas in the tank from, our team at BDT and MSD to support us, not just with capital, but strategic advice and all the good things that a board should be doing, right? As they work with us as executives. So when you think about kind of taking that dynamic where you would think 111-year-old firm, well, of course, the CEO is going to be somebody who's been here for 40 years, right? Or whatever the number may be.
Yeah.
I think what is changing, to your point, is the way we are approaching growth, and not just us, but the industry, right? And thinking about growth. And then secondly, approaching growth in a way that can create the right environment for our employees. And so to me, it all comes back around to talent and creating the right talent environment and the place where people want to come and work with you. And I think in doing so, they're going to need to see a path for themselves, right? Not just me, but others in our firm that are going to see a path for themselves in leadership. And so on the one hand, I think there is great experience that comes with tenure and longevity. And we've got great people in our company that have been here 20, 30, 40 years. In fact, at our holiday party, there was someone handed me a note that added up the collective tenure of this 6 or 8 person table. And it was in the hundreds of years,
yeah, that's
right?
Good. Yeah.
Great, great thing to see. But on the other hand, I think showing our employees that you don't have to be here for 30 years to be successful is inspiring to them. Right? And whether we're creating new roles for them or they're moving into existing roles as people change roles in the company, it's an important part of the dynamic, and we really need to do that. So I feel glad to be here. And in fact, Scott, my predecessor in the CEO role here, Scott was in his 40s when he assumed the seat here at Woolpert, and was a relatively young and relatively shorter tenured person in the history of the company as well. So we've got a little history of that here, even outside of our capital partners getting involved.
So to pull on this string a little bit more, or this thread a little bit more, Neil, want to thank you for being an avid reader of our Word on the Street publication out every Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I understand you have an article that you'd like to talk about that might be related to this recent discussion.
Yeah, the one that I am an avid reader, Mark, and I'll be waiting for my Word on the Street T-shirt, or what is this that could be sending?
Operators are standing by, Neil, so we'll see you right away.
But, the one that I flipped through a few of them here and kind of went back through ones that resonated with me. And there's one that one of you two gentlemen authored here, creating get to, not have to jobs. And it's something I talk a lot about in the company on a regular basis. And it struck me, of course, because I think it was somewhere deep in my mind subliminally after spending those 4, or maybe it was 40 years with you guys working together, because it's something we used to talk about a lot. But what I love about this notion is creating a get to and not have to environment for your employees. Is it starts with providing opportunities for them that attract the best talent, but also create the right culture simultaneously, right? And we can do these things in a way where people come in and they get to work on the best projects. They get to use the best technology. They get to grow their careers in a different way that they might not be able to elsewhere. They get to be part of something that advances them professionally, but also fulfills them personally. And all of this stuff comes back to sort of what we value and how we want to approach working with each other as a team in the business, right? And I feel so rewarded when I see it out in our company, out in an office, in the field, somewhere where we're doing R&D, somewhere where something cutting edge is happening. People get so excited talking about what they're doing for their job. And at that point, it's not a job. It's transcended that, right? And that's what really gets me excited about it. But you have to sort of have all of these elements come together, right? So I get to work on this really cool project, but the hours are grueling and the compensation's poor. Okay, you're not creating a get-to environment. It's a great culture, but I don't feel like what we're doing is important, right? These projects aren't exciting to me. You're not checking all the boxes. So it's a multifaceted thing.
Yeah.
And to me, this is foundational to being able to continue to grow the company. And frankly, you called out the point that, we're backed by private capital. Well, part of that is generating great financial performance.
Yeah.
It's fundamentally important. But if I don't do these other things for the company and we don't do them together, financial performance isn't going to happen, or it's going to happen on a really short, unsustainable timeline, right? And we want to do this for the long haul, another 111 years or whatever the number is.
Well, that's the balance, Neil, right? I mean, you've got to balance these elements, whether it's the learning and the people and the culture aspect, whether it's the what do we got to get really good at doing as an organization aspect, whether it's the market positioning aspect, the financial aspect. You can't just focus on one of those things or you're going to ditch the firm. It's like, okay, I got a private jet. Why don't you hop on and we'll fly around? And you look in the cockpit and you see I've got one gauge and it says airspeed. You say, well, don't you care about anything else, like maybe altitude? And it's like, no, I'm just going to get good at airspeed in this flight. Next one, we'll get good at altitude. And you're probably not going to want to go on that flight with me because I'm going to ditch it, just like I could ditch a company if you're not weighing those things that you just talked about.
Yeah. It's all about balance. And I think, in fact, these things behind me here, these are our core values. And I usually put up one featured one, and usually it's supportive because there's a reason we talk about that one first. But the other one right there is balanced. And we talk a lot about that with respect to everything we're doing. You're absolutely right, Mark. If we put the throttle down hard on revenue growth, well, I'm probably not as profitable as I should be. And I'm probably not taking care of my people as much as I should be, right? If I put the throttle down on nothing but culture, we might not be able to do it for the long haul because we're not making paychecks, right? And things that we need to do to take care of people. So it's a salient point, and it sticks with me that we cannot be myopic in our approach towards leading the company, and we cannot be short-sighted in our approach towards growing the company. It has to be a balance of what we need to do today, but also what we need to do for tomorrow.
Well, and just Mick, let me jump in and we'll tie this up. But it's how value is created in a professional services firm like Woolpert and all of them in the industry. It starts with the learning and growth of the people, and those smart people figuring out how to make the company get better at doing really important things. And you get better results in the market positioning and the back end of it with the financial performance and so forth. But that's how value is created, and you can't take a shortcut to it.
It's a virtuous cycle if you can do it right. And
Right.
You're right. There are no shortcuts here. And it's usually comes back to doing the fundamentals right.
That's right.
Neil, I have a follow-up on this, but before I do, you have a private jet, is that right? Is it a company jet?
We'll talk about that offline.
This. Okay. So Neil, we had one of our guests on the podcast was Mike Carragher. I think you know Mike, CEO of VHB, and we were discussing this very topic with him, and I asked him what sort of feedback he gets from employees that they're excited. What corporate is doing is making a difference for them and creating an environment where they feel like they get to have jobs rather than need to have jobs. So it's a two-part question. So are there one or two specific examples of what you do at Woolpert to create that, make it happen, sustain it? And then how do you get feedback from employees where they're telling you, Neil, thanks a lot. This is brilliant. I've got the right technology, or my gosh, this team is doing so well because of what we're all doing together here. So are there things that you do specifically, one or two, either as an individual or a team? And then how do you get the feedback? How do you get?
Let me take the second part first and the first part second there, Mick. But something we do at the company, we participate in Great Place to Work. So this is the most formal way that we get employee feedback. And in fact, we're about to do what's called Pulse Survey. But we go out to the company, everyone in the company, very regularly with a set of structured questions that talk a lot about, essentially, are we meeting the needs of our employees, right? On a multitude of dimensions. And we've been fortunate that every time we've done this, we've come back as a certified Great Place to Work. We've done it 9 times.
That's great.
It is validating to us, but the real reason we do it is to get the feedback, right? And then so what we do is once we get this feedback, we come up with a list of specific actions that we want to put forth in the company and action those into the business for the following year, right? Based on the feedback that we get. So a couple specific examples, we got a lot of feedback from employees that they would like more training, continuing education. How can I get from being the quintessential example in our space? I'm a great engineer, I'm a great designer, or I'm a great architect, great designer, or a geospatial technician. How do I get to be a project manager? It's a different skill set. It just is. So we put forth a whole series of PM trainings in the company, homegrown, led by a couple of our key leaders. In fact, Brian Dickerson, who leads our infrastructure business, he's out there doing them today. So we are responding to what our employees are asking for with specific programs that are to the mutual benefit, right? They're good for employees, they're good for the company, and they start to create that virtuous cycle. The other one, we've had a fairly progressive work culture from an office perspective, even prior to COVID. So we've been pretty long and kind of leading edge on it's okay to work from wherever you are, right? As long as you have connectivity, you can do your job. Sometimes you do have to be there with your team or with the client or at the meeting, and that's part of the gig. But you know what? If you need to work from home on Friday because you want to pick up your kid from school a little early or whatever the case may be, that's okay. Yeah. And we're flexible with that. And that came as a direct result from some of the feedback from these Great Place to Work surveys that we do. So that's the structured part. The unstructured part is really working to create connectivity. I talk a lot about creating this culture of collaboration and connectivity. And it's hard. We've got 5 continents that we've got coverage of.
Yeah.
Time zones. In fact, I just sent out a global town hall and I had to find like an app online to try to pick the time zone because it's becoming less than straightforward when we've got Sydney, Australia, London, Johannesburg, and then, here in the States, right? US national. It's tough, but creating this culture of connectivity and collaboration and doing that around specific initiatives that people get excited about. So we did something last year called Big Strategic Initiatives, play on words, but big was buildings, infrastructure, geospatial. These are our core business lines.
Love
And we
it.
got people together out of their swim lanes and said, I want you all to get together and work on this thing, right? How do we grow in market X? Or how could we better be more efficient in terms of global delivery across these three continents, right? And we got smart people together in the room. They worked on this, but the biggest benefit to come out of it now is I don't have to ask them to meet with each other. They love meeting with each other, right?
Yeah.
They're doing it purposefully, right? So creating that culture and getting people together, that's one of the things that just gets people fired up. And the other thing that's energizing is when you meet great, smart, talented people with different backgrounds than you. We had the joke yesterday about we had a call, and you were talking about baseball here as we're into the baseball season. There was more talk about cricket on this call than there was baseball, and that's because of the folks that were on it, right, and what they were passionate about. And so these things of creating the connection points around the world and people getting inspired by meeting peers that they look up to and are inspiring to them, it creates that environment of I'm excited because I get to meet with so-and-so today or work on such and such today because you're getting exposure to new things.
Neil, do you have any idea how cricket works? I know they run around a lot. They can smack the ball with the paddle if it goes out of the stadium. I don't know if that's good or bad.
It
It
is
goes on a long time.
it is a vague notion for me, Mark, but I am working on it. The one I have, and Mick, you will appreciate this.
Yes.
I have been getting into Six Nations rugby.
Good man.
The
Good
Ireland
time.
team is quite good, although I have to say I cannot pick sides here. It would be very divisive.
I was going to say that you definitely can't. No.
Italy, could root for Italy. Number one, we don't have
That's
an
true.
office there, and two,
Yeah.
I would say they are unlikely to be winning the Six Nations.
Or you could root for. Yeah. Can I bring us back to your emphasis or your focus on collaboration and collegiality and connectivity? When I look at Woolpert, I look at a firm that is, if not unique in the industry, but it's definitely an outlier. We've got engineering and architecture together. We've got engineering, architecture, and geospatial together. And and in my consulting work over 30 years, getting those three groups to work together in a way that delivers extraordinary results for clients, and feel like they're part of the same team, and also deliver great financial results, that's tough to do. Then when you take that and layer that over 5 continents, that's a lot of work. And yet I look at Woolpert, I know the results, I see the trajectory of growth, I see what's happened there over the last 20 years. Can you speak to just how you make all of that work, Neil? It's a long question. I'm sure it's not an easy answer, but my gosh, what the Woolpert brand is stronger than ever, and you're pulling off something that I think most of the firms couldn't pull off.
It starts with we have some phenomenal people here, and we have people that are not just great leaders and not just great technical talent in what they do, but we have a lot of people that are very intellectually curious. And this is the thing I get excited about, right? So when firms have joined us either through acquisition or we have new leadership, coming on board into the company, and we've been very fortunate to get some great leaders that have joined us here recently, in my tenure over the last couple of years here. It's more often than not, Mick, the architects are here because they see the value in the geospatial. The geospatial folks want to come here because they see the value in the AE and they see how the puzzle pieces come together. They're maybe not experts in the other field, but they think I can see how this could benefit my clients.
Yeah.
I could see how I could bring this to the table. And we've had multiple instances where, kind of magic, I just sometimes just chalk it up to this is the magic, right, of bringing great people together. But the client has some ask And then a vague question comes back, from that conversation. The client was talking about, could we do some type of as-built scan of their facility before we design it? Oh, they want a full 3D digital twin, and we should do indoor LiDAR and some 3D laser scanning in a BIM model, right? No problem. Meet this person. They'll work with you on it, right? Being able to make those connections, it validates that initial thinking when folks get excited about working here. And then as they learn more, because they're intellectually curious in many, in many ways here in the company, it kind of builds on itself. And so, our architects are still primarily doing architecture, and our engineers doing engineering, and our geospatial folks doing geospatial work, but the lines become a little more blurred. And so it's not like we operate as A, E, G, and never the three shall meet.
Yeah.
It's actually quite the opposite. When I talked about big, right, buildings, infrastructure, geospatial, the way we're organized, we have geospatial solutions in all of those things, right? And they're embedded and they inherently work together. So it's really about creating the right, one, culture and environment, and two, to a degree, the right structure to allow us to bring the whole suite of solutions to the table for people.
Let me pull on that some more, and let's bring the outside world in a little bit. To me, it's been for a while, there's really nothing new under the sun, but with the kind of technology we have today and how fast the geospatial and AE sectors are evolving, what changes do you think firms are still underestimating, if you think there's any underestimating going on there?
I think it's a couple things. I think in this country, we're still pretty behind on delivery methods relative to other parts of the world. If you go to other parts of the world, you're delivering a file, right? A digital twin, right? Not plans, not 2D documents that need to be brought back into life as a 3D, a piece of infrastructure, right? So I think that change is going to come. The obvious one is AI. And I know you guys have spent a lot of time on that in your work. And I believe that AI is going to enhance the industry, not replace the industry, which I think is an important notion here. And that's kind of the way we think about it and approach it here internally. In fact, I'm sitting in my office in Pittsburgh as I speak to you guys. And here in Pittsburgh, we have our AI development team. So we've got a team of computer scientists, roboticists, some really smart folks. And I see a lot of things written on the whiteboard in the office that I have no idea, right?
Just nod and walk by.
Yes. But
that's the best thing to
do. They're taking this technology and applying it to work that we've done in other ways for a long period of time. And it's not replacing the need for the staff and the professionals to use their professional judgment to do the work. It's just helping them do it faster and more efficiently, right? And that's where I see it going for the industry. And I think the other thing, so you think about delivery methods, you think about using AI, and AI is a way in which to deliver work. And I think the third thing is, I think the types of professionals that are going to come and drive activity in these firms is going to start to change, right? So I'm a civil engineer by background, and that's the world I come from. And a lot of our firms out there in the industry, right? They're full of engineers, or they're full of architects, or, a certain mindset. But I think we're seeing huge benefits from computer scientists, roboticists, folks with social sciences backgrounds, right? Who are coming into different elements of our work and bringing a different type of thinking perhaps to the table. And I think we're going to continue to see that evolve. I think a little bit about, even on the M&A front, when Answer Advisory joined Accenture, right? And you look at that, and and Brian did a tremendous job building that firm, right?
It's Brian Carruthers here mentioned.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, you got to tip your hat to him for seeing that, right? And seeing that coming. And I think that's going to be the blurring. And that's been a conversation in the industry for a long time, right? When is the big four going to come to the table? And I don't know that I go all the way to all of the sudden these industries are going to merge, but I do think around the edges, we're going to see some diversity of approach to how things get done.
So Neil, let's talk about this for a second. So market trends, client behaviors, those kinds of things, how are they shaping your priorities for the firm right now?
So, we need to skate to where the puck is heading, as they say, right? And so,
baseball, that's baseball.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought it was cricket.
Yeah. No. Oh, it's cricket. You're right.
Yeah.
for those that are informed in baseball, I'm sure they would all agree. But to that point, Mark, I mean, the reality is, and this is the underlying foundation of our company. And if you go through the E&R list, many of our peers, right? The work that we do as an industry is so important. So when you think about shifting of markets and client priorities and preferences, these are generally small shifts and redirections, not massive ups and downs. In what world is anyone going to say repairing a structurally deficient bridge is, we don't need to do it, right? So I think that foundationally as an industry, and when I talk about skating where the puck is heading, these are slight changes to direction, not massive shifts to strategy. And so that does two things, right? So one, as an industry, we tend to be relatively stable and tend to be moving up and to the right year after year, and as I play back in my head, various charts and graphs, they all go up and to the right. So I see them in your, at your conferences and presentations, but that's the trajectory of the industry. So we're on solid footing. Start with that, right? Then when you think about where priorities are shifting, we have folks that can be talented and fungible across multiple types of applications, right?
Yeah.
If you know how to design, to do civil engineering on an industrial site, you can probably be effective doing that on a government project, right? Or, doing it for a data center, right? That's an area where we've really grown quite a bit in the data center space in the last 2 years. And it's a place where we're able to bring skills from other aspects of our business to the table to help that go faster because the clients are asking for it. If at some point that slows down, we'll move somewhere else, right? But there's a home for our people through all of this, which is kind of the important thing for us to keep in mind.
Neil, the firm has made a number of acquisitions over the last several years, and even predating you. And what's interesting about Woolpert is that at your size, I would say you've made relatively more acquisitions overseas than your peers, and have a more global footprint than many of your peers. Traditionally here in the U.S., firms have not looked to grow beyond the U.S. because the market is so big here. But you've made acquisitions in Australia recently, the UK, South Africa before you joined, and Woolpert has made an acquisition in the number one country in the world, Ireland.
So have you been? It's not.
Have been, Neil, yes. What's your focus as president CEO in a firm that's less than $1 billion? And typically we see this global footprint in firms that are north of $1 billion. What's your focus? Is it to become a global firm? I know you want to become the best AEG firm, I believe is how you frame it. It may not be the best, but AEG is very important in the discussion of the firm. But do you see yourselves as a global firm or a U.S. firm with overseas operations? What's your vision in that regard? How do you think about yourselves in the future?
I love the way you asked that question, Mick, because I talk a lot about that inside the walls here at the business. So the vision, and this has been our vision, even predating me. And what I like about it is it's pretty enduring, right? It's pretty timeless, but is to be the premier global AEG and one of the world's best companies. And the one of the world's best companies part speaks to great place to work, culture, a get to work for kind of a firm.
Yeah.
And the other half is premier global AEG, right? And it's not the biggest, but we want to be the firm that our clients see as bringing the most value to the table, right? The innovative solutions and being able to drive value for them.
Yeah.
So, I would say a few years ago, you probably could have characterized us as a U.S. company that happens to have some work outside the U.S. we're a global business today. And the vision is to continue to drive on that path, but we need to do it in a balanced way. There's lots of great opportunity here in the US, and we can't forget about that. And we're focused on continuing to grow here. But equally, we want to be building our business in the right strategic markets outside the US for a whole host of reasons, right? Diversification, capability of technology, adding unique portfolio to the mix, great people, of course, and starts with that. But it's not about putting a flag in the ground in every country on the map. This is about being in the right places where the right progressive work is being done, and then bringing those folks to the party, right, to come and participate with us. So we've been pretty intentional about where we've grown outside the US. And I would say in general, our M&A strategy has emphasized quality over quantity. We want to do a few really, really good deals and get them right from a strategy and a culture perspective, versus trying to do a lot and accept that we might not get them all right. You know?
Sure.
And I think it's just a little bit of a different approach. So when the right firm comes along, if it's in Dublin, Ireland, or Johannesburg, South Africa, or Sydney, Australia, I want to do the deal with the right firm.
So as the CEO and your CFO and the executive team, at 650 million or so on the way to $1 billion, you've with the international component, overseas components, you've got more risk in the business than maybe some other firms of your size. And you have to have additional competencies that other firms may not have: foreign exchange exposure, political risk, country risk, whatever it might be. Who is your peer group, Neil? Because when we hold our symposiums, or when we have events, or when we're working with our clients, 99.9% of the CEOs that we work with see their peer group as U.S. CEOs. Is your peer group U.S. CEOs and global CEOs? And if it's the latter, how do you access that peer group?
It's a good question. Well, first thing I'd say, Mick, the way I think about it is, on the one hand, there is more risk in operating beyond, the contiguous 48, right, or wherever many firms are. But I'd also suggest it alleviates risk through diversification, technology, expertise, the other things that are brought to the table, right?
Right
So
point. Yep.
then it's a trade-off, right? And sure, we've benefited from, we've got a fantastic CFO. He joined us from Dell's EMC business. He has operated globally. He's lived in 8 countries. We're getting the right folks on the team to manage the day-to-day of having a global business. And that's, one way to deal with it. But I think, to your question on peers, like the quintessential, I hate to give the it depends, but it kind of depends, right, on what part of our business we're talking about. So when we're talking about our geospatial business in particular, that tends to be a much more global business, and tend to meet with firms and spend time working with firms who are also more global in their businesses, right? Whether they're competitors or partners, or ultimately, firms that join us through acquisition, like our team in Ireland, Murphy Geospatial team. We have one set. And then when you come back here to the US, there's certainly a group of folks, perhaps more on the A&E side of our business, that we align a little more closely with here. But back to the becoming more global and those lines getting blurred, it's pretty hard for me to say, when I get the question, who are your competitors? It's really hard, or who are your peers? It is really hard for me to just say, oh, it's obviously these 5 firms, right? Because it's now so nuanced based on the way in which we have grown. You could dial that into a country. You could dial that into a foundational service line like geospatial, or you could even dial that into a market or an industry, right, where the competitive set is different across them.
Neil, you had mentioned earlier in response to Mick's question about being a global firm, you mentioned the right firm, regardless of where it is. What is the right firm? What are some characteristics of the right firm?
I always talk about 4 boxes that we have to check with conviction, and strategy and culture are the obvious 2. Economics is an important one in getting an acquisition done. It just is, right? The price has to be right. But the last one's situation. And I think situation gets overlooked a lot of the time. And so that comes with sort of firms that join us being honest with themselves about what they want and what they're looking for, and us being honest with them about what we want and what we're looking for, right? And so we've had situations where, take our team in Ireland, Mick, Murphy Geospatial, the CEO of Murphy, Niall Murphy, who's now one of my great business partners here. Niall's in his early 40s, right? We're of a similar vintage in terms of age. And they got to a place where they grew that business from, no joke, 4 people to 400 people. And they were at a place where they were kind of capped out on the operational infrastructure that they wanted to put in. And so as they were being really honest with themselves, they said, we want someone that can help us continue to do this, but take some of the pressure off of having to do it ourselves. That's a great situation for us. Another situation that we can work with is someone that says, listen, I've had a great career. I've got 2 or 3 good years left, but that's what I've got left. And as long as we have that conversation up front and we're really honest with each other about it, I can work with that, right? So its situation is so critical. The other 3 things, of course, they have to line up, right? No one's going to take half as much for their, for their company just because they like me or they like us or someone else.
Yeah.
No one's going to come when the strategy just doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And the culture part tends to take care of itself. And you guys have done enough of these deals too, that by conversation 2 or 3, you could tell if you're speaking the same language or not. So I come back to, we got to do all of that, but that situation piece is pretty important. And it comes back to sort of just a really vital look in the mirror that everybody needs to take before we start talking to each other.
Yeah. So Neil, we'll get a little bit introspective here, and then we'll ask you. We'll put you on the hot seat here.
I love that part.
Yeah, it's called Words
that's
to
part
Wise.
of the pod.
It's
Yeah.
fantastic. So you've seen this industry from multiple angles, whether it's investment banking, whether it's consulting, whether it's operations. What's the one thing you know now that you wish more professionals in our industry understood?
Completing the cycle of cash flow. And I say that from the perspective of a proud graduate of the University of Pittsburgh School of Engineering. And I know how much they taught me about that. And when I say completing the cycle, what I'm talking about is selling the work, delivering the work, generating the revenue, generating the profit on the work associated with that revenue, and collecting from our customer type.
Yeah.
And that last part is the one that many firms in our industry struggle with. You guys have seen this year in, year out with your consulting work, and I've been able to be a part of that. And, a lot of folks get narrow in their view. Well, I'm a sales guy with the sales target and I made the sale. So my part's over, right? Or I'm here to deliver the project on budget and let accounting take care of the receivable, right? And I think the folks that have been able to be really successful in general, right, are able to glean a bigger picture view of all the parts and pieces that have to come together. And that's something that we as professionals, it is important that we practice engineering architecture well, right? We got to deliver great design, but it is equally important that we're good stewards of the business, because that's what lets us do this over the long haul. So the more project managers that can think that way, I think the better off the industry is going to be, not just us here at Woolpert.
Neil, it might interest you to know that in Miami, at our symposium there last month in March, we noted that average collection period in the industry has started to creep up. So word to the wise, right?
Well, and you might remember, Mick, I was teaching at my where I got my MBA from in Boston, up on Beacon Hill, and the kids would come in. I was teaching seniors a business class, and they would come in, and the first thing I'd ask them, it's just they were sitting down first day, what's the most important thing in business? Name, brand, the people, the product that you have, all this stuff. They'd listed all those, all good stuff. But bottom line is it's cash. That's the most important. That's the air you breathe as an organization, especially professional services organization. And so it's all great. All that stuff leads up to it. If you can't collect the cash, you can't reinvest in the firm. You're out of gas. You're done.
What about crypto? Is that important?
I would think crypto is probably 4th or 5th on the list,
Right,
somewhere
good.
in there. Neil,
Yeah.
do you agree?
It's up there. I'm waiting for the plug for buying Mick coin or whatever it's.
All right. It's now time for what everybody's been waiting for here. Word to the wise, where we ask our guests for some wise words. This time, Neil, rather than ask you a question, I'm going to start a sentence and I want you to finish it. And that sentence is, the firms that will thrive over the next decade are the ones that...
Take care of their employees.
Okay.
Wow.
And that's so. And when you say take care of their employees, what does that mean?
It's invest in them. It's build the right culture. It's provide them the right tools and training. It's create the right environment. It's back to that get to list. But I think a lot of folks have their heads on AI and tech and yeah, we got to do that stuff. Someone still has to participate in the business. Someone still has to be here and be the team. And it can't get overlooked. So the firms that really, really focus on their people, I believe, are the ones that are going to be really successful in the long run.
Well, I think I couldn't agree more. Mick.
No, it's perfect. It's great. Thanks, Neil.
So, Neil, it was really great seeing you again. Mick,
It was good to see you again, Neil. I'm not going to say it was great.
okay.
It was good to see you again.
I'll back off of that too. I'd say it's good. It was good to see you. But thanks so much for joining us here today, Neil. And thanks to our viewers. Please like and subscribe, and be sure to join us this June at our 2025 Western States M&A and Business Symposium in Las Vegas. Until then, we hope to see you next time on the street.